In a democratic, civilized society, the police exist to enforce law and order. While politicians create, amend and scrap laws, it's the job of the police to make sure that people actually follow them and catch those that don't. However, some have argued that in the last few years, the police in the UK have started to fail in this regard, with action not being taken on crimes ranging from bike theft all the way up to serious sexual offences. It's important when discussing topics like this to have a good look at what's actually going on. So in this video, we're going to take a look through Home Office data in England and Wales and see whether crime outcomes are indeed getting worse. One of the main reasons this story has been in the news lately is a rather shocking video from a few weeks ago, in which bike thieves were spotted using an angle grinder to unlock a bike from behind a bike shed. At the time, it was reported that the Metropolitan Police were not looking into the incident. This started a conversation about how the police treat low-level crime like bike theft, with the Labour councillor stating that he had 2 cargo bikes stolen, which was recorded in high-definition CCTV. He said that the Met had taken no action in both cases. Following this saga, The Times published an article looking into how the police deal with low-level crimes. Alongside anecdotal evidence, they also looked through different types of crime and how different police forces dealt with them. For example, in Thames Valley, there were 340 cases of blackmail in the 3 months up to September last year. No one was charged. There were 391 non-life-threatening arson reports in Gwent. No one was charged. There were 66 attempted burglaries in Warwickshire. No one was charged. There were 288 cases of pickpockets in Hampshire. No one was charged. And finally, there was a huge 751 reports of bike theft in Hampshire. Again, no one was charged. In fact, when they looked at a number of charges made nationwide on various crimes since 2015, we see that things are definitely getting worse. There's been a huge 30-point drop in the stalking charge rate and a 24-point drop in the harassment charge rate. Currently, the charge rate for cannabis possession is higher than stalking, assault with injury, public fear, alarm or distress, residential burglary and bike theft. This is why The Times went on to question whether the police has given up on low-level crime. So we're going to look into this a bit deeper by going through the police outcome data produced by the Home Office. We're also going to start looking at the charge rate more generally and see how this has changed since 2015. Then we're going to have a look at different types of crime and compare what the outcomes are now and what they used to be. We'll finish up by looking at why outcomes are the way they are and whether this government has had a role in all of this. So let's start with crime outcomes over time. Since 2015, the number of cases where police claim there were evidential difficulties has increased hugely, from just under 10% in 2015 to just over 25% in 2022. Similarly, there's been a gradual decline in the number of cases where the individual has been charged or summoned since 2015, from just under 20% to just under 10%. And when we start digging down and looking at specific crimes, we notice that some crimes have had worse outcomes than others. Now, it should be noted that for some crimes this makes sense. For example, on sexual offences, investigations tend to take longer, and therefore there will be a higher proportion of cases without an outcome at the end of the year than other types of crime. Anyway, as it turns out, the offence group that results in the highest number of complete investigations without any suspects identified is thefts. Drug offences result in the highest number of people being charged and summoned, which is contrasted to sexual offences, which have the least. Over the last few years, the charge rate for sexual offences has remained low, at between 3 and 4%. Last year, though, this had dropped even further to only 2.9%. For rape specifically, this is only 1.3%. Other offences like robbery had a conviction rate of 6.3%. Theft had a conviction rate of 4.1%. As the Times data shows, this is a huge decrease from 2015. When we look at time to assign an outcome, we see that there are also a number of different takeaways. For some crime, the time taken has decreased, and for others, it's increased. Sexual offences saw the steepest decrease in time taken for an outcome to be decided, with a drop of 7 days between 2021 and 2022. However, it still remains very high at around 62 days. Rape specifically has a much higher time to reach an outcome, at 94 days, although this has dropped 3 days. The average of all crimes is 12 days, and this has increased by 1 day between 2021 and 2022. This is largely because many other offences saw an increase in the time taken to reach an outcome, with drug offences increasing 3 days, violence against the person increasing 3 days, and robbery increasing by 4 days. So it seems that things broadly have gotten worse recently, with fewer convictions for many crimes and, excluding sexual offences, it taking longer for an outcome to be decided by the police. But why might this be? Well, it's clear that police numbers have declined since 2010. While a number of police officers have been taken on in recent years, they barely replaced those lost in the early 2010s. The first time that police numbers went up since 2010 was actually in 2019, and as the data mentioned throughout this video compares 2022 to 2015, it's understandable why things have gotten worse. It should go without saying that with fewer police officers, it's naturally harder and takes longer to secure convictions. Alongside this, Dr. Rick Muir, the director of the Police Federation think tank, argues that as police have begun to focus on more complex and higher harm offences, the less harmful and more straightforward crimes get less attention. This may be why, for example, the time taken for rape and sexual assault cases to be concluded has dropped, whereas many other crimes have taken longer. Additionally, he argues that police are recording a much higher proportion of crime than they used to, although it is worth noting that the number of reported crimes is 75% lower than it was back in 1993. It seems then that there may be a number of reasons why convictions for a lot of crime has fallen, but it's hard to argue that the drop in police numbers since 2010 has helped. All in all, it does seem like the situation regarding crime, and specifically convictions, has gotten worse in the last few years, in a lot of different cases. Undoubtedly, this will be a big topic for politicians when the UK heads into the next general election, and it's too early to say which of the parties will win the argument on crime and punishment. Now, before we go, if you appreciate our content and want to have a more condensed and almost a real-time look on the stories of the day, then be sure to subscribe to TLDR's Daily Briefing. Over there, we break down the biggest news stories each day, before running you through 3 of the stories you might have missed in the day's chaos. It's the quickest and easiest way to stay on top of the news and make it sound like you know what you're talking about. And as it's TLDR, you know it'll be unbiased and easy to understand. You can find the video every weekday over on the TLDR Daily YouTube channel, or if you'd prefer, you can listen by searching in your favourite podcast app.